death. Got some rather morbid lighting for this video. Death is, by definition, the end of life, the total and permanent cessation of all the vital functions of an organism. And that makes sense. When you die, all of your bodily functions cease to function, and you get to rip one more gnarly full-body fart and clock out for the rest of eternity. But the cessation of your vital functions sounds a lot more like the cause of death than the actual definition for death itself. The argument can be made that there can be no precise definition for death because it's not something that we entirely understand. And I think that's why a lot of people fear death. It's not so much dying itself, but not knowing what happens after life. Obviously, depending on your religious affiliations or your philosophical beliefs, you may have an idea as to what happens when we die. Though, respectively, it is a bit naive of us to assume that we know for sure. But I perfectly understand why we do it. I mean, it's a perfectly human thing to do, to try to comprehend the incomprehensible death, as it is perfectly human to fear death itself. But it's irrational. I mean, death is inevitable. You are going to die one day, and it's something that everybody does. And that sounds like the worst form of peer pressure ever, but it's true. So I don't think anyone should fear death, but I think everybody should give death the respect it deserves. Death is like that one person you met at a party once. You don't really know them, but you nod at each other respectfully every time you cross paths. Then one day you piss that person off and they end up stabbing you in the back, or vice versa. And that's it. You are in death's hands just as much as death is in yours. I was driving around with a friend of mine once, and they said to me, you know, you could kill us right now if you really wanted to. And they were right. I could have easily veered off the road and ran into a tree, or swerved into oncoming traffic. At the same time, public bathroom floors are rather sticky, and I could get a sudden burst of traction and fall and smash my head on the sink. As final destination as that sounds. But again, I don't think you should fear death just because it can happen whenever. I don't think you should fear death at all. Just be respectful of it and know that you are somewhat in control of its occurrence. I mean, there really are worse things to fear than death. Things that you can't control, like American politics, or my printer when it decides to spit satanic scripture at me, because that's a thing that happened. Anyway, summary of the video, death is not a thing to be feared, but a thing to be respected. And if you respect it, it will respect you. I don't really know how to end this video. Let's just pretend I segued really nicely into a meaningful and sage conclusion and call it a day. Cheers!